I'm really excited. I remember I saw when you first sent out the emails that you were going to create a podcast, and I've seen some of your other interviews, so it feels really special to be here on multiple levels, personally,
Mm,
professionally, and
mm,
yeah.
Yeah, I've been sharing a little bit already publicly about my love and admiration for Amanda. Um, we didn't really like we first met each other at a summer camp that I ran. I think we had seen each other online. We were Facebook acquaintances
Yeah.
professionally, and then you came to summer camp, and I remember my first impression of you there was like, holy shit, like the embodiment of Kali. You were like this like really dark, like every time you came in this space, you were just like, like it seemed like you had just like risen from the soil of the earth in each moment. And I was like, damn, like what is she tapped into? And I was like simultaneously attracted, but also a little bit like scared of like, can I meet that? Like, do I have enough like dark feminine fucking power to like actually meet this woman? And and it ended up we had this beautiful conversation because we have a lot in common, especially around being Americans living in Europe and dating European men and also being embodiment facilitators. And then this love affair is just growing, and I wish I could spend so much more time with you, but this is one of my ways to do that.
It's funny when I hear you. I think there's an important caveat. I was going through a really deep breakup, so I'm not just a collie raging dark feminine woman all the time, but I was going through one of the hardest heartbreaks of my life. So yeah,
Totally. You're
it
not
was a
like that all the
journey.
time. But your access to it and the way that you just owned it and were in it and like embodied it, you weren't shy about it at all. And there's something even about that. If it's not that it's like who you are, but that you're so self confident and like solid in yourself that you can just be that when it's the moment to be that. Like that's a range that you can inhabit and fully be seen in and received in. Like you're not scared to go there.
Yeah,
That
and not even that, I really can't. Like it's really hard for me to like put on the like everything is fine mask. The people pleaser is not one of the things that I adopted for
no, no,
sure.
no. You're totally not the people pleaser kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And what else and what I'm excited to speak with you about today amongst so many things is what an incredible entrepreneur you are. Like self-made, powerful entrepreneur, and the vision that you have and the journeys and like all the behind the scenes of what you're doing and how and why, from like this arc of the whole journey that you take women through in your courses to like your day-to-day life reels on Instagram to your relationship shares, like all of it is just like yeah, it's a joy and an inspiration to follow you and be tuning into your life.
Hmm. Thank you. I feel so seen.
Yeah, I see you. Yeah. Yeah, so let's jump into to just going for the professional, and I would love to hear a little bit about like how you're crafting your business and the journey that you're taking women through and where they enter, where they end up, and like how like just hear a little bit of the behind the scenes for all the other, because this is a big piece for people who are facilitators, is they just start offering things but they're not actually thinking at all about why and what it
Yeah.
leads to and what that means for the long term. And I see that you've got that nailed, and I would love to just invite that transmission here because we haven't had it come through before.
Yeah, yeah. I think a part of it is important if you're just now facilitating, you're just starting. I feel like facilitation, you and I have talked about this, facilitation and entrepreneurship, they are quite different, actually.
Mm,
You can be an amazing facilitator, and if you don't have the skills of an entrepreneur, it's going to be really challenging for you. And you can be an amazing entrepreneur, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're an amazing facilitator. And maybe you meet someone who kind of complements you. And I know you've been in some co-creations where you've had some beautiful marriages in that way. And I really feel the arc that you're talking about actually comes from the entrepreneur.
Mm.
Because in the beginning of your facilitation career, it's totally fine to like throw some paint on the wall and see see what sticks. It's like, what resonates with me? Do I like this? Do I not like this? How big do I like the group sizes? What actually do I love facilitating? Do I like co-creating? Do I like doing it on my own? But then there comes a point where you realize that it's kind of no longer wanting to be a hobby. You
Yeah.
actually want to get paid, and you want to get paid well doing what you do, because you realize that your gifts are absolutely necessary for the global shifts that are, I feel, paramount for us to really continue cultivating the life that we desire as humans.
Mm.
And yeah, this is where a very important, powerful part of your entrepreneurship needs to come online. And it's kind of like for me, the entrepreneur and the visionary are one and the same. And I'm not saying
Mm.
that's necessary for everyone, but I feel many entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you can relate to this with the field and everything you've birthed. It's like there's a vision, there's a mission, there's something bigger than me
Mm.
that is so powerful and so potent that no matter what kind of shit I have to go through, I'm committed. And you need that. You need that, especially if you want to be successful in the world of entrepreneur and facilitation. And for me, that mission, usually, I think for many actually, those of us who are leaders, it's like it comes from a pain, or it comes from a wound, or it comes from
Mm.
like, wow, I never had this thing, and this thing was so painful not to have or not to experience, and now I have it. I went out on my journey, the hero's journey or the shero's journey. I went out, and I manifested the thing that I longed so deeply for.
Mm.
And it would be a disservice for me if I didn't then turn around and create a map for others to do the same.
Mm.
And yeah, it's interesting. I get a little emotional when I say that, because it's really, yeah, that's where like the passion and how I have so much ability to do all of these things. And so for me, there are three pillars that I didn't have. And the first pillar was a beautiful, loving connection to my body.
Mm.
I really struggled, and I struggled to understand her, to learn her, to feel pleasure, work with my weight, like all kinds of stuff. I really struggled with my body, and therefore my self-confidence, because that's
Mm.
what's directly tied. I think for many women, that's probably similar. The second piece was love. I was never shown true partnership or beautiful partnership, from my mom or my dad. So there was something around like really longing. This feeling of having love was never really present for me. And then the third piece was family or community.
Mm.
And I grew up with a single mother and an absent father. And I never really, I would have these American Christmas movies or whatever, and they have the family. And of course, the family has drama because that's what keeps you engaged, but you had family. I didn't have any of that.
Mm.
So for as long as I can remember, I've just been this single person out traveling the world, trying to find out how to cultivate these things inside myself and then attract them. And over the last decade, I have very successfully done all of this. So I've developed a beautiful, loving relationship with my body on multiple layers, which is a huge part of what I teach. I've cultivated and dedicated my life to sacred union and really helping other people find that first within themselves. As you know, that's where it begins, and then inside another. And then, yeah, this field of cultivating community and cultivating places where we can grow together. And all of this falls under the umbrella of embodiment and tantra. And so this merges into the mission, which is something called, the brand is
Mm.
called Temple of Radiance. And it's essentially this big umbrella that walks women, and we now are starting to bring a path for men under these three aspects. How do I love myself, love my body, develop a deep relationship to my body? How can I love myself and develop a healthy union inside so I can attract a healthy mate? And then how can I grow in and with community?
Mm.
And this is really the umbrella of the Temple of Radiance. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, and especially connecting, which is this, like, for me, around one of the questions I'm usually asking people is like, how is what you're teaching or facilitating a reflection of what you're living? And I didn't even have to ask you that question because it's just already an integrated source of inspiration, aliveness, that you are just taking people through the journey that you're living and that you've lived. And so thank you for sharing it in that way, and thank you for your beautiful emotion as well.
Mm, mm,
Seeing the places where it touches you.
mm.
And you are an incredible embodiment facilitator. Like, you are so embodied as a facilitator. It's breathtaking. And so I'm curious to hear also a little bit about that, how you see and teach and guide people into their bodies, and what that first step looks like for most people as they enter your spaces.
Yeah, for me, it actually starts with um, what you do at home
Mm,
and how you show up with yourself, for yourself at home. So, whether you come to train with me in a retreat or you choose to train with me online or even learn from me online, because I offer a lot of free things on Instagram, etc. One of the things that's consistent is, how are you showing up for yourself at home? And are you showing up for yourself? And what ways are you choosing to dedicate and devote? So the path of Tantra is a lot about devotion. It's about devotion to finding God in everything,
uh,
in everything. And it's a practice,
uh,
because when you're triggered at your partner, it's maybe really hard to find God in that moment, or when you're having a shitty day, or it's like, it's really a practice. And so, how are you choosing to devote and show up for yourself? And this is how, from everything from how do you eat, how do you nourish yourself, who do you spend time with, how do you spend your time, what is your balance between doing and non-doing, what are your rituals, how are you connecting to your body? And this is where embodiment for me begins. That simple question, if you're listening to this, it's like, how am I showing up or not for myself?
uh,
And for me, embodiment is multi-layered. So it's, first of all, I believe it's your connection and your awareness to multiple aspects of self. So you have the physical body, so you can ask this question, how am I showing up for my physical body? Your mental body, so what is my connection to, and how am I showing up for my mental body, taking care of my mental health? Your emotional body, which is something many people don't give time to, which is how, going back to the original like start of this episode, like, I have such a containment and also relationship to my emotional body that I fully trust myself to be able to go into an emotion and hold myself through it and then move on. So this is like, are you actually in connection, or are you repressing, like most people, in the emotional realm, which is then going to come out sideways or manifest as dis-ease in your physical body?
uh.
Then there's your energetic body, which is my favorite body, which is something that many
Is
people
it?
don't really have so much of an awareness of until you start tuning into it. It's like, what is my relationship to the energy that I'm holding inside myself, and how is that connecting to everyone around me? And then there's your spiritual body. And your spiritual body is really, how am I in connection to the thing that is beyond myself? This also links me back to my mission and my vision. Can I be a clear channel to keep showing up for the thing that's beyond myself?
Uh,
And when you have all of that and you're connected to it, you have a consciousness around it, you're working with it. And all of these are playing at any and every moment,
uh,
literally, in any and every moment.
uh,
Then your sexual body, your aliveness, your erotic body is just turned on. It's just there.
uh,
So this is how I see one of the layers of embodiment. So my constant practice is developing relationships and expanding my consciousness around these different bodies. And
uh.
And everything I teach, whether you're learning online with me or whether you're learning in person, like then when you start to become awake and aware, you feel, you mentioned the word transmission,
Mm,
you feel the natural transmission, which is essentially a consciousness that someone is emitting, that then you feel when they walk in the room. You can feel when someone is embodied by the way they look, by the way they act, by the way they move, by the things they say. It's their presence alone that makes an energetic impact. Why? Because that person is conscious of the impact they are making, because they
mm,
are conscious of themselves, not self-conscious, but conscious of themselves.
mm,
And it's like this, it's this awareness of oneself and the impact that it's making on the world around them, that I believe also makes a really powerful leader.
mm,
And so for me, how are you showing up or not for yourself, and
mm,
what is your connection to all of these bodies, and can you cultivate spaces where you can devote yourself to getting to know yourself?
mm.
And this is where embodiment begins for me.
Gorgeous, amazing. I wonder if you'd be open to sharing maybe either kind of open to either one, but either your favorite practice that you do to cultivate the embodiment in these different dimensions, or even maybe something you bring into groups to support, and maybe they're the same thing, maybe exactly what you do for yourself is what you do, but like I would love, especially when you were talking about that your favorite is the energetic body, because I had no idea that I would have said maybe the physical for you, but I would love to hear, like, what are you doing, what does that look like?
Oh my God, there's so many things. So I have, like, we were talking about the funnels and the systems of like, how do I lead people through this journey? Because my ultimate intention is, at the end of all of the work I'm doing, is to help people be in love with themselves, and therefore cultivate love for life, love for people around them, and love in their relationships, their
Mm,
external mirror. And so for me, I have a whole retreat, which is my one of my favorite retreats to teach, because it's so me. And I remember in the field training, we talked about how, the mirror is actually the fields that you create and the people who come in. And it's like, oh, this retreat is, because this is all we do. We just spend the whole week just dropping into these different layers. So for me, it's like heaven.
mm.
I don't have any computer work or emails that pull me out of, my
Yeah.
journey. But essentially, um, one process that I love a lot, it's similar to Latihan, and I know you know
Mm,
Latihan.
yeah.
So for those of you who don't know Latihan, it comes from Osho, and it's this closed eye or blindfolded movement meditation, where there's a specific movement in Latihan. I use something different, but it's where you're on the mat. You can either be by yourself and or with someone in front of you, and you're in a movement meditation where you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're not thinking about if you look good or if you're spiraling your arms or whatever, but you're really in this, allowing the notes and the vibrations of the music to carry you into this meditation. And it's like you meet God. You can meet God in this essence where you drop out of the mind and drop into the magic of what's always here,
Mm,
if you choose to tap into it. And
mm,
when you do it with someone else, what's so beautiful is you're in this movement and you can connect to this being. But you don't, it's not like contact dance where you're in, now we're connecting, or primal play, which I also love, an amazing practice I know you're amazing at, and I love doing your primal plays. But it's where you're meeting in the animal and you're really connecting through the eyes. This is more in the energetic and the physical. Can I be aware of my physical and the energy, and can I melt in, and can I move away? And I do this with myself, I do this with my partner. I have friends over and we body link. I live in a community house. I'm like, let's do body linking, and let's really cultivate and create this space where we can move out of the mind. So this is one of my favorite practices, and I know for many people, the biggest challenge that I hear across the board is, how do I get out of my head and into my body? So this practice might be really hard for you. So what I would recommend is perhaps to do some shaking, just shake. I have a whole shaking playlist. You can Spotify Amanda Biccum shaking.
I'm
And
gonna
just,
look that up.
yeah, the facilitators are always looking for good playlists. So
Yeah.
yeah, so go like shake in the morning when you get up, shake in the afternoon, especially after work, shake before lovemaking. If you want to do this version of latihan, shake before, so you can just really activate, because you can feel the chi vibrating in you after you shake. It's literally very tangible. So that's one of the quickest ways I always recommend. And you can do it. I would recommend doing it for minimum 5 minutes, ideally 10 minutes. And it's an instant way to drop you into the body.
Beautiful. And it's like you're using the different bodies, because shaking would be a very physical practice, but it's also waking up the energetic body through deepening into a physical practice.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
also helping you drop out of the mental body. So it's like I'm
Mm,
moving beyond the mental body to really feel the impact of my physical body.
beautiful. Beautiful. And I'm curious how you like, is the Latihan also the way that you support your energetic body opening with in your partnership?
Yeah, I mean, there's many things I do. That's one way. I'm a real big fan of tantric breath work. So really
Ah,
working with breath work to use and to circulate the energy, whether that's in Yab Yum, which is I have a bunch of meditations on my Instagram, like different breath that you can use to really work with. And what's so beautiful about that, when you use it in a tantric way versus a normal breath work, you can feel the erotic body start to turn on. So then
mm,
it's like I can really feel the energy. Let's say I'm in Yab Yum with a partner. It doesn't have to be Yab Yum. You could also do it in front of each other. But I can feel the penetration, let's say the energetic penetration, and I'm breathing up the energetic penetration of my partner, and or vice versa, which is really beautiful for me to play with.
mm,
um, and there's many different breathwork practices that I do. I work with qigong a lot as well. I actually really enjoy
mm,
qigong, and it helped me a lot to work with my subtle body. Is working with on my own self practice, doing qigong and qigong meditations and movement practices.
beautiful. Yeah, I've seen a lot of your videos with do you call him Steve or Shiva?
Shiva,
Shiva,
yeah,
with
yeah.
Shiva on Instagram, breathing together, and I'm always like, oh, I so want to be like in that experience. It's one of my great pains and longings is to
Mm,
feel the separation of the unity that happens between couples. That you can see it from the outside, but you can't experience it with them on the inside. But I
mm,
love witnessing the two of you, and always very curious of your practice, and also like I imagine it looks very different now than it did when you first started. And so curious about that. It's one of my favorite things about being in partnership with conscious men, that you can
mm,
embody the practices together and develop them. And I see
mm.
you and Shiva really doing this together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it does. It just goes deeper. And depending on where we're at in our cycles, like another embodiment practice that people wouldn't think of. So many people, when they think of embodiment, they just think, oh, this person is connected to their body. And that's where it stops.
Mm,
But for instance, like what we did the other day, we had a tea ceremony. And tea ceremony also really works with calms the mental, because it's a meditation.
mm,
Qigong practitioners, they would drink a specific type of tea called pu erh. And pu erh is a very high vibrational fermented tea, and it works with the chi body. So for instance, we had a meditation, and we would read the Radiant Sutras together, and we would drink tea in silence, and then we would sit in Yab Yum, and we would do our breath work. So this is an example. And then we went into a manifestation practice. So I believe a
mm,
big part of conscious couples, because there's a lot of this kind of conversation, but it's like, what is it and how do you get there? And for me, it's about conscious dreaming, and it's
mm,
about communicating. Okay, so I'm writing down, like, what are my dreams for the next year, what are my dreams for the next 5 years, and he writes down his, and we write down our goals, like financial goals, and what are our achievements, and what are we calling in, and then we both write them down, and then we share. And it's like, maybe he expands me, he has some ideas that I didn't ever think of, or I expand him, or maybe there's a slight mismatch, and that's an opportunity to be like, okay, so I'm curious about this, because I think so many couples, they just kind of, life is so busy and it's happening and, it's just going. And then maybe one person is starting to dream this way and the other person is starting to dream this way. And if you don't talk about it and you don't create moments to be with that, and you might not ever know until it's too late. And then there's a lot of pain there. So I also am a big fan of bringing different levels of embodiment. And this is working with the mental body to support the future self. So my present
Mm,
self is working using the mental body consciously,
mm,
constructively to support my future self and
mm.
align that in my relationship as well, which we started doing this last year. And wow, we've had a lot of profound shifts in what we've been able to cultivate and create together because, yeah, manifesting with one person is powerful, but manifesting with two is even more powerful.
Wow, that's super cool. I really appreciate you sharing this. I have not yet had a conscious dreaming practice with a partner,
Mm.
I mean, visioning and like in different ways, but not in the way like the energetics of how I hear you speaking about it. And
Yeah.
it touches me to do that together. And I imagine it could be a great marker of some of the disconnection that's happening and the kind of growing apart instead of growing together and being misaligned. Um, and it also just personally, I feel so much compersion and joy
Mm.
for you because when we met, you were in this breakup. And then a big part of the time I spent with you was also as a single woman who was like not being met and looking for love. And so hearing now a year and a half later where you're at with Shiva and what you're both doing together and cultivating, I'm just like, yes, like
Yay.
so fucking wanted this for you and so proud of you. And yeah,
Mm.
you wore singlehood really well, but you wear partnership at a different level.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. And this is part of like hearing you say that. It's like this is part of my soul's mission
Mm,
because I think you can relate. I think I created a video, a live the other day where I talked about the independent boss babe.
yeah, I did see that.
And
I was
yeah,
pretending like I couldn't relate at all.
yeah. And I see this as like this is a big part of my work actually. Polarity is another big part of my work.
Mm,
And I see this in our generation. Like there are so many women post, the 1950s when we had the rise of the feminist movement, and all of these women became independent and could cultivate and create money and get jobs and have credit cards and like really not be tied to relationships and partnerships to support them to live. There's been so many women who have really risen, if financially, entrepreneurially, spiritually, like it's been amazing to
mm,
see.
mm.
And the shadow side to that is that they've become so strong in their masculines, and I say this because I speak for myself as well.
You're speaking for
I
me.
became Yeah, I became so strong, for yeah, in my own journey, that I, yeah, was very in my masculine. And then I was like really longing to not feel like I had to do it all alone, which is one of the biggest challenges of the masculine in anybody. It doesn't matter. It's like the pain of feeling like you need to do it all alone. But
Yeah.
yet we create that for ourselves because we go out and we do that, and it's like I can do this and I can do this. And
Mm,
there's a longing that I see, especially with the women that I work with, who are usually powerful, empowered entrepreneurs, often women who are really successful in many areas of life, but yet love and relationships, it's like, ugh, I can't really feel like I can fully surrender. And this is where a lot of polarity work comes in. And this is where, for myself, I really had to look at, why am I creating the story that I can't be met? What
mm,
am I doing to attract this? And there's something that had to shift in me. First of all, my story. Second of all, I had to drop into my feminine and my vulnerability. And I had to literally start taking off this strong, independent boss babe, this strong, independent entrepreneur who learned from her mother, you don't need a man, Amanda, just do it all yourself. I had to learn to undo those stories
mm,
because, yeah, I don't need a man. And I am so much more supported when I choose to have a man next to me.
Mm.
And in that, it's like I've seen through my own journey, first rewriting the stories and consciously practicing feminine practices, literally showing up on my mat with myself for 2 hours a day, going through all of these practices to learn how to be into my feminine.
Mm.
And only from that place, which is super fucking vulnerable and challenging and not a fun place to be, by the way. That's why I created the coping mechanism of being strong and independent and having all my shit together, which created a different wound, right?
Yeah.
Not being able to be held because I have it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I had to learn how to be in my feminine and then from there create space for someone else to step in. And then
Mm.
from that, I've seen how beneficial it is for me as a strong, powerful woman to choose to step back and choose to let someone else take the lead. And that
Mm.
has been a constant practice. And I've seen financially, energetically, yeah, in my energy, like groundedness, how powerful that's been for me. And
Mm.
it supported me on all levels. I feel way more secure, I feel way more spacious, I feel way more safe, that there's a union and that I can rest and lean back. And it's also benefited me tremendously on my entrepreneurship journey.
Mm.
So this is another big pillar of like, I really desire everyone in the world to have an amazing, committed, devoted partnership where they can feel loved and yeah, like they can meet each other. And
Mm.
so this is, yeah, this is a
Mm.
big part of my
Mm.
mission because it's so
Mm.
good. So good.
Mm. You really touched me in this. I'm tearing up as you're speaking because I can recognize it's almost like you're speaking about me. And I think you know this from being with me and trying to support me. How hard it is. I really put up a good fight. Like, no, I can do it by myself. And in that, I'm rejecting the very thing that I'm longing the most for. It's this crazy self-fulfilling prophecy of like, I want so badly to be supported, so badly to be held, so badly to step out of my masculine protector role. And at the same time, it's like, will someone actually be there? Like, can I really trust that that space is going to be taken and that I'm going to like, that it's going to be okay. Let's
Yeah.
just say.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about what you're doing on your mat for 2 hours a day that's supporting you. I could maybe do a little bit more of that in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak into that. This is really
Mm,
when I work with my emotional body. And
mm,
yeah, I just want to say, like, for anyone who's listening, just how masculine and feminine work, it's not on gender, just so everybody's clear. Um, and there is an essence that each person has, which usually is on one side of the polarity or the other. And masculine, in essence, is consciousness. So, Rachel, you're a very, you've done a lot of personal development work. You're a very conscious being. You see a lot of things. You're aware, consciousness, awareness. You're aware of many things on many levels. This
mm,
is what makes you such a good facilitator. You are, right? You're aware of the time. You're aware of the energy. You're aware of the group dynamics. You're aware of, the back end. You're aware of like your consciousness is huge.
mm,
So, in order to feel like your consciousness, aka masculine, can surrender, you have to feel that somebody else is aware of all of these levels, which is a lot,
mm,
right? So if you don't feel like somebody else is aware of all of these things, then you're going to be in the masculine. And this is just, okay, I got this, I got this, I got this. Da, 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 da. At the same time, it's a catch 22 because if you don't step back, and I had to learn this a lot with my team, and I'm sure
mm,
there's some piece that you can relate to this. It's like if I don't step back, then it's the self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to be the one that's aware of all these things, and nobody likes to be micromanaged, and nobody likes to feel like they're doing it wrong or they're not doing it right. And you may be 10 steps ahead of the other person, but like they're never going to be able to meet you or even over create but step before you if you don't step back and let
mm.
them try.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's also a practice. It's a continuation of practice of like, okay, so on my mat, for instance, I first and foremost would sit with the longing, because that longing is deep within the feminine's heart, I believe, of everybody, even men, everybody, the
Mm,
feminine, the longing to be fucking met
mm,
and to feel safe. I mean, the moment that we are born, like we are in a world that's inherently, in some ways, unsafe because you
mm,
can't control it and predict everything. And we're
mm,
separated from the creator. So there's this longing to be met. And the feminine's practice is to be in that longing
mm,
instead of work or go to the gym or go on social media or whatever our distraction mechanisms are. Go be with it.
mm,
Go sit, light your candles. I have my statues and my altars. I see some behind you as well, the
mhm,
Shiva, right? Be in that prayer and that devotion and that heart opening. And I did this actually at the field. This
mm,
was sometimes my practice when everybody would go to eat. I turned on the music and I put on a song and I freaking like prayed my heart through my body in the floor and like spilled my tears and gave my masculine, gave myself this container to really fucking feel it.
mm,
So I could stop holding on to it. And
mm,
from there, it started to melt my layers and my walls and my stories. And from there, I was able to lean back more and to hold the vision of what I was calling in. And from there, and it's still a practice. Like I'm still like, oh, she like, don't forget this, and she
right.
was like, hey,
Yeah.
you can relax now.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I'm remembering.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like so many different layers, but like being with myself in the emotional body and
Mm,
feeling that longing and that yearning, it's also a gift. It's
yeah.
such a gift if a feminine can go there.
Totally.
And that was many hours I spent doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it softened many edges inside of me that
Mm.
was holding on and felt like it needed to do it all alone, because I was also programmed that that's the safest way.
Yeah.
And in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really inviting this in. This is part of my visioning for myself and my next year for sure, to be able
Mm.
to soften and allow this masculine support and holding in. Um, And yeah, I'm also touched because I was just with you recently. I came and stayed at your house, and I'm touched because I perceived you as really like my feminine felt so held by you. Like you were just
Mm.
like you had it all. Like I haven't stayed at someone's house in a while who like
Mm.
really cared for me like the way that you
Mm.
did, which just like I don't know, like from like making the guest bedroom to being like you putting fruit out in the morning for me to take on my
Mm.
airplane. Like these little things. It's just like, oh, like she's thinking about that I'll be hungry in the car and wanting for me to be nourished. And like she's thinking about, she puts the towel or whatever,
Mm.
those things where it was just like, oh, I could feel your masculine like holding me. And I could feel those parts of myself like, oh, it's, you can surrender here. Like she's got you. Um, and so I'm just appreciating even like the way that you can shapeshift back and forth between those poles of like, hey, now's the moment. I have a guest and there's a friend here and I'm going to come into my holding and be, present and be with her. And then maybe like Shiva comes home and you're like, okay, now I'm going to like lean back again and let him, rise up and cook for me and clean and take care of me, and just really appreciating your versatility in that, like the ways that you switch back and forth and the ways that you're not just this feminine, you can embody whatever part is most needed and called for in the relationship that you find yourself in.
Mm. I just take a moment to take you in and feel the,
Mm.
yeah, the impact, as you would say,
Mm.
of that share. And again, I just feel so seen.
Mm.
Thank you. And yeah, for me, this is the embodied woman or man, but I work mainly with women. And it's like, it's actually the integrated woman.
Mm.
But that doesn't sound as sexy.
No, but it matches. It's like to be the embodied woman, you have to be integrated. It's like it
Absolutely.
totally it feels synonymous. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is it. Like, and this is a reflection for people who know me really well. And this is, it's so beneficial for your relationship, because this is something that I heard many times from my ex partner, is like, wow, like the way that you can flip, like you're behind, like during the day, you're behind the computer doing emails, looking at an overview, you know, doing all the things you know very well how to do. And then the moment that the computer shuts down, I'm in the feminine and I cultivate the candles for the house. And like, then what you do as a woman is you can create the setting for your feminine to drop in. And then when your feminine is dropped in through candles, through lighting, through ritual, through even like the little bit of ceremony, your partner can drop deeper into his feminine. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful gift that we as women can give first and foremost ourselves, but also we can give our partners. Because one of the challenges is that women really, like I hear often, is that I really want to have more depth in my relationship. I want to feel, feel you. I want to feel your reality. I want to feel your heart. And the embodied gift we can give is, how do I drop into that space so that I can invite the masculine of myself and of my partner into a deeper layer of landing in the softness and in the heart and in the vulnerability and in the feeling body.
Mm,
And when I do all of my practices, that's what gives me the space to do so, because
mm,
my masculine sets a container. All right, here's what we're going to explore from this time to this time. I fully go in, and then I end. It's like, all right, cool, now it's time to do work or whatever. And then, okay, it's time to shut off. So this versatility, it's like, it's not, embodiment isn't something you do, it's something you become. And
mm,
you become that through everything that you're doing. Everything matters. Everything matters. How
mm,
you set yourself up matters. And so this is how I hear this reflection a lot. And I can't emphasize enough how important this is, I believe, for all bodies and all beings, but
mm,
especially for women who really want partnership and to feel like they can be in their feminine.
mm.
Because yeah, you don't want to, I mean, for conscious women, we don't just want a man who's just going to do everything. It's like, we would like be like, oh, what am I doing, what's my purpose, you know? Like I love to give back, I love to be in my masculine. She was like, you have a great cock, Amanda. Like, he doesn't mean that sexually, but he's like, you know, like
Totally.
you really like, and I
Totally.
love that, you know. So yeah, I think you can relate on these pieces.
Totally. Totally. So with you, so seeing you, so feeling you, and really getting it and appreciating. Yeah. Yeah. I was in a beautiful process recently in a group field where one of the women spoke into her longing to be protected by the men of a tribe, like for every man in the tribe to protect her. And we did a whole piece around this of like energy, like physically having her feel like the men come in and having her in the center and be protected. And the women in the group just lost it, just like lost it, of just like, oh my God, like we don't have that and we want that. And yet I'm doing that. I'm protecting myself and I have all these layers that I've built up to be that self creator, self protecting. I can do it all. And in that, I'm blocking any chance I have at receiving that. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful moment
Mm-hmm.
to be in, like tribally, to see that we're all, that there's many of us who share that
Love.
longing and desire and also challenge at the same time.
Yeah, and also what I hear that I think is specific, I think on the other side, for men to do that together, to
Mm,
come back to that tribal, like
mhm,
it's not just one man fighting or protecting or
mm,
providing. It's like,
yeah.
we are here, we've got your back, we're all in this. It's like, this is again comes back to the essence of community, right? And why I
Mm,
believe it's so important and it can teach us so much. And I have a feeling you believe something similar, which is why you do the work you do.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe we're at the place now. I'd love to talk a little bit. We're kind of really beautifully coming through your whole your funnel or your like journey. I want to call it like the journey you take people on. We're at that like sacred union moment. And I'm so curious about the work that you do with the initiatrix. And now you're going to also start to bring men in. And I'm guessing it's part of this exact piece that we're speaking to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, what I hear from so many of the women in my field who are showing up and doing the work is that they really, really love to be met by men who can hold them and meet them in the depths and have the consciousness and around their sexuality, their body, their mission, their purpose, spirituality, etc. So, the way somebody would come into my field is either journeying online and or then coming into the embodied woman retreat, and then from there there's the initiatress. And of course you don't have to go to the embodied woman to the initiatress, but if you want to train with me, this is how we invite you. If you've done your work, you've come to any of your events, you're familiar with tantra, you've done retreats, you've done workshops, festivals, etc., the initiatress is the intermediate, more advanced tantric training for women. And this came from, again, my own personal journey of wanting to be met more deeply in the bedroom
Mm.
and wanting to be met in depth and wanting to be met like, oh, in the deepest layers of my being, physically, energetically, spiritually, emotionally, all of these pieces. And so for me, what happened was I had been initiating men through tantric practices. So, as my best friend, we came together and realized we actually don't want to initiate men anymore. We don't want to have lovers anymore. We really want to meet our king. And so we created the initiators, but we're like, these teachings need to live on. We need to teach these women because we hear so many women aren't being met the way they want to in the bedroom. And we know how to easily get met in the bedroom. So we need to teach this.
Mm.
And so we did a ritual and we created this retreat, which now it's the fourth time we'll be running it. It sells out every time. It's like honestly a masterpiece of a retreat.
Wow.
And
Wow,
it's
wow, wow.
really, yeah, it's amazing. Rituals are a huge part of my practice as well. And so we basically blend the classical teachings of tantra, which Arya Hendricks, who's my co-teacher, she's phenomenal at it, really. She's like, yeah, her higher crown chakra and her experiences training in different ashrams is very much embedded in this retreat, so people get a classical taste of tantra. And then the embodiment aspect of how do I actually take it in, how do I bring it in to myself, to my day, to my partner, when I'm necessarily not maybe always going to do these crazy elaborate rituals, but how do I bring it in a practical way? And so this is the initiatress. And then at the end of training for a week, doing sexual practices to whatever degree you're comfortable with women, because this is how it used to be taught back in the day. You would live
Mm.
in a temple and you would practice with women, and then the men would come in and they would be met by a guard or a gatekeeper, and they would be thinking they're coming to the temple to be initiated. But then they would be met by the brothers, and you first had to go through a brotherhood initiation before you could visit the priestess. So
Mm.
essentially, we've recreated this, and Shiva, who is my partner, now holds point and takes men through a training. And this training it was a day, and now it will be 3 days in Bali, and then there will be a week long training that men will go through on the same property side by side with us and do their initiation, which at this moment it's called the rites of passage. And then we meet for a final temple. And this temple is like, it is so exquisite because you have just been training both side by side, keeping the polarity, keeping the distance, and then you come together, and it is a deeply devotional, sacred, powerful place where magic does, and yeah, does happen basically. And
Wow.
this is, yeah, and then there's a bigger part of wanting to really bring together community, and so we'll start to have core gatherings for people who have gone through any of these initiations where we can bring more people together, because it is
Mm.
challenging to know, where do I find someone who's
Mm.
done their work and is doing their work and is committed to the path like I am. And
Mm.
so this is a part of the bigger vision as well.
Mm, This is so beautiful. I'm so glad you're sharing this. And as you were speaking, I just had this vision of like you and Shiva doing your conscious dreaming practice one day, and him being like, "I want to give men a rites of passage," and you're like, "I want my initiatrixes to be met by the masculine." And then you guys were just like, "Oh my god, we could bring them together, and then we'd have like, like
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
that all come together before my eyes, and so happy for you and for this and for the people who get to be there. Like, what an exquisite um initiation to go through together that's so rare and so lost and so missing from our culture and from our relationships and our lives.
Yeah, and our like, it fits into the facilitator training as well for women who want to teach this because essentially we want to give this retreat over. So like I won't be the initiatrix teacher forever because I want to free up my time and my next project that I really want to do, which I'm really excited about. Aria is also excited about it, but it's to create couples retreats for a divine union. And so we can do
Mm.
couples rituals where then now you found your sacred union, you want to go deeper, and there's different rituals like synchronized lovemaking or different worship ceremonies and rituals that you can go on as a couple together in a group
Mm.
space and also
Mm.
privately. So this is like the
Mm.
next version of what we want
Mm.
to call, because that's where I want to be. So what do we do as
Yeah.
leaders? We create what we want in the world. So this
Yeah.
is like the next vision.
Oh, so
Yeah.
beautiful and like epic for you. Like hats off to you again. This is what makes you an entrepreneur. Like there are some moments where I'm just like, okay, I'm done with that. I'm moving on, but like not in the like, okay, who am I going to pass that on to so it can keep
Yeah.
living and it can keep generating and it can keep, moving out into the world and I can still move on. So this is just what you have naturally inside of you that's so inspiring and makes you so much more than a facilitator, makes you a leader, is that you're always in the vision of like what's the big picture and how can this touch people and how can it keep living on beyond my participation in it.
Yeah, and I think just to speak to that for anyone who's listening, what I found is might be a golden nugget for anyone who's a
Mm,
facilitator. I could not do this if it was just me.
mm,
So this again goes back to how can I share power? How can I share the vision? And Arya coming in has been an absolute spiritual blessing and business blessing and friendship blessing. Because I've had many co-creations over the years and I was waiting for the perfect one, and she came in and it was like, wow, I feel met by my masculine fucking hardcore. It's like zap. And I can really relax and trust that she's going to do what she says she's going to do, and I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and we can fully lean back. And Shiva often makes makes jokes. He's like, yeah, you can have your cock out when you're with Arya, but when you're with me, you better put it away. So it's like I really feel met in that. and
mm,
and then Shiva coming in as well. So now there's this triangle of like, yeah, it's again goes back to the community. We cannot
mm,
do this. Like it would
mm,
be way too big to
mm,
hold all
mm,
on my own. And the
mm,
fact that there's like this where we're here, we're all rooted for the mission and the vision, and we all have our own segments and our ways that we're going to show up and support it to come true through. It's been one of the best things because I was the independent boss babe, and so was Aria before we found each other. We're like, it's way too complicated. It's more somebody else I have to manage. Like they're not going to do it as good as I am. It's easier for me
totally.
to just do it alone. We had all these stories, and we make less money. Totally not true. Actually, there's an amazing divine union in this co-creation as well, which I believe has been a big part. And our devotional practices, our spiritual practices, have also, we don't just write emails, we do all kinds of witchy shit on the background as well to really support the energetics behind it. And that
Mm,
is all really a
mm,
big part of why I feel it's able to come through the way it is.
mm, 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 Thank you for that. I have one more piece. I'm noticing the time, and I have one more piece that I'm wanting to explore with you, and it connects to what you were just sharing, which is about all the witchy shit you're doing in the background. And you've also been talking a lot about ritual, and I find this also such a missing piece of our culture and our the way that we gather. And I'm curious, like, how you started learning, because I find a lot of people come to me and they want this. They're like, I know I want to do ritual. I know I want to engage in magic, but I don't even know, like, there is no real imprint of that anywhere. Did you like read a book or did you study with someone? And now do they just pop in and you're like, oh, this is like, how is it working within you that you see these rituals and these magic and this witchy stuff? And like, what would you suggest for a woman who is like, I want this in my life and I don't even know how to begin or where to start?
Yeah, amazing question. And so back in the day, I started doing rituals probably about 10 years ago, and I was YouTubing. I was just like, how to do ritual.
Yeah.
Now I have it in quite a few of my online courses because it's a big part of what I do. I also, there's different books. Like I looked at paganism. I looked at, like, I just started Googling and researching. And now there's like so many different things you can follow on Instagram. These things didn't really exist 10 years ago, very rarely, very little. But there's so many people, you know, who are practicing ritual magic. There's sex magic. There's, you know, there's ritual arts. There's the Green Witch, if you want to do kitchen rituals. She's got a YouTube channel, and there's many books. You can find many books.
Mm,
And I feel the best for me also is just being around people, the embodiment of people who do it. So by going to retreats, by going to containers where it is a practice, um, you pick up the transmission. There's that
mm,
word again, that embodied vibration of seeing how the way in which someone shows up and does things changes the energy of the space. And you just said before
mm,
this call that some of your students called you a shaman. Well, this is part of the shamanic traditions. I did a shamanic training years ago in Nicaragua, so I also like learned some
mm,
some pieces there as well. But that's essentially what they did. They understood the energy and the energetics of space and nature and how everything contributes. And so, yeah, for me, it go to spaces where people are practicing ritual and ritual magic. YouTube, learn about different gods and goddesses. Are you connected more to? I lived in India for a while. There's an amazing book called Awakening Shakti, and they teach all kinds of rituals in that book.
mm,
Or the Egyptian lineage. There's lots of people on YouTube who talk about the different Egyptian lineages that you can connect to. There's the pagan lineage. So do your research and do your discovery and go to places
mm,
and see people who are living the transmission, because that's
mm,
also a big part. I've also spent many years in community and traveling around the world studying from different people who ritual is a huge part of our culture in the past.
mhm,
Not so much in the future, but if you look at Buddhism, shamanism, Hinduism, yoga, tantra, all of these practices had ritual. And there's an amazing podcast. Do you listen to the Emerald?
Everyone I mean, I don't talk to almost anyone anymore who's not recommending the emerald.
Yeah. So there's a really good podcast that says why mindfulness isn't enough.
Mm,
And if anyone just at least listen to that podcast,
mm,
and it talks about the importance of ritual and
mm,
how we've lost it.
mm, mm. And is that something someone could come to one of your spaces and deepen into a practice of
Absolutely.
ritual? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the embodied woman, essentially, it's 6 days long of ritual. From the moment you walk in to the moment you end, we spend a lot of time in silence. We're in the body, like we're practicing, we're moving. The candles are lit. I have tea ceremonies from, you know, early in the morning to ending with ceremonies in the evening. Like
Mm,
this is me. I'm like a walking ritual wherever I go, really. Yeah. So yeah, it's
mm,
definitely something
mm.
that people could come experience.
So beautiful. I would love if you just if you want to share how people can engage with you, or like where they can find you next, or what container they can jump into next with you, or if they just want to get started from home, how they might do that.
Yeah. So I hang out a lot on Instagram. It's a very fun, creative place for me to be. My Instagram handle is the Amanda Biccum, and I'm sure you'll put it in the show
Put it
notes.
in the night too.
Yeah. My website, you can also find some things on the website as well. I have online courses where if you want to get started in embodiment, I talk about tea ceremonies on there, and there's over 40 different classes. So you don't have to, you can be held while you start your embodiment practice.
Mm.
I'm heading out to Bali very soon. So if you listen to this at the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025, there's a initiatrix retreat that's happening there. And then I'll be back in Europe in May. And I have the Embodied Woman retreat. And then I flirt around at all the different festivals. I'll be at yours and
Yeah,
in Engspaka. And yeah, so come hang out. If you listen to the podcast, come say hello. I really love, connecting with people around the world who are interested in this kind of work.
amazing. Yeah, thank you for the reminder that you'll be at the Field Festival, the first one, August 2025. It's going to be so good. Yeah, and thank you for your time and your love and everything that you're doing and being. Thank you for being my friend. and for, yeah, just reflecting back to me the places where I'm, yeah, shining and brilliant, and the places where I could surrender a little bit more. Really
I can't
appreciate
wait to
your,
hear how that practice goes for you.
yeah, you're one of my easiest, most favorite mirrors. You know, there's some people I'm really like resisting, and you're just like, I'm just like, yeah, I can see myself in you in all the ways, and it's easy. And even the shadowy parts are just like, yep, that's mine too. Yeah, I got that one too.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for being
Rachel.
here. Yeah, I really love you a lot.